Welcome to ReConnect with Plant Wisdom. I'm your host, Tigrila Gardenia, nature-inspired mentor and leadership coach. In this podcast, I share ancient and modern knowledge from biology to spirituality about the wondrous ways in which plants can help you lead a naturally conscious life. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of ReConnect with Plant Wisdom. It's me, Tigria Gardenia, and this episode is going to be so much fun. You're going to have so much fun. So I invited a good friend of mine, Tritone Crisantemo, to come and share with you his amazing plant music project, Masterplants Symphony, which started off with this super unexpected collaboration that we did in Copenhagen many years ago. But I'm not going to spoil any of the fun because there's just so much about plant music and about transformation and about, really entering into your plantness through music. There is so much in this episode. So without further ado, this is episode 59, Masterplants Symphony with Tritone Crisantemo. Enjoy. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We were just giggling before we started this, and I have a feeling that you're going to experience us giggling the entire time because that's just kind of the way that we are. So I am super excited. I have with me here Tritone Crisantemo, who is a very good friend of mine. Well, at least we were saying he used to be a really good friend of mine. He's been traveling for a few years and he's finally come back to Damanhur, back home. And Tritone and I used to live together in the same nucleo home. So there's just so many things that we can go to. But today we're specifically going to talk music.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to talk about music. We're going to talk about plant music. So, but before we even get there, who is Tritone?
Who's Tritone? Yeah, that's a lifelong question of mine. Tritone, in this moment, he is occupying himself with plant music, traveling the world. I'm a citizen of Damanhur. I've been living here since 2010. I'm originally from Denmark, and I studied sound engineering. I've always been in the world of music, and in Damanhur, when I came here, I became sort of the guardian or caretaker of the sacred forest that is here. And I lived here for a bunch of years, and that sort of one point just melted together with my musical aspirations, and that became this crazy plant music project that I'm now a part of. I'm the human part of a plant band, and I basically go around the world. I travel around and drag cables around and
for the plants.
For the plants.
He's the plant roadie.
Yeah.
That's it. That's what you are. You're a plant roadie.
That's my thing, the plant Sherpa. And then we set up the gear for the plants to be able to play concerts.
All right, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. Yeah, because this actually has a great birth story, which is the fun part of all this, right? So Tritone and I used to live together in the Sacred Woods Temple as it was turning into a temple. So really this magical, he was there before me, but in this beautiful treehouse village, super magical kind of, it's indescribable. I think even today it's not the same as it was when we used to live there. I was just talking with some other friends of ours about this exact same thing, because way back in that time period, this transformation was happening in the woods. And I think all of us were sort of being pulled along by the plants in ways we couldn't have imagined.
Yeah, for sure.
In that aspect.
It changed all of us living there in that period.
It did. It really did.
We all ended up somehow working with nature, all of us. Which is fun.
Which is interesting because many of us, actually, I was thinking about this because you, me, Muflone, we were all city folks. Zigola, we were all city folks. I mean, Amsterdam, Turin, Copenhagen, like Miami, we all came from city environments. And here we are living in these woods and not even realizing just how much the woods were living us. Like
for sure. Changing us profoundly.
Really, so much. So I could tell you so many things about his complete background and I can ask him to go, but we're going to kind of jump into this period. So there was a period when we were living together where I got invited to Denmark to do a presentation. At that time, your brother, who is a musician also, right? And we were called up his brother and I called up Tritone. I'm like, Tritone, I'll pay for you to come with me if you're going to help me at the booth with, I was doing a plant music back then with the Music of the Plants presentation. If you help me, and I have to do 3-hour-long presentations.
Did you?
I did 3.
Oh
You
my
only
God.
participated in
3 hour long.
hour-long
Gosh,
presentations.
wow.
So I had to do 3 of them. And it
Mhm.
was this really amazing concert. It was one of those body, mind, spirit type of events. And they asked me to come and to do these presentations in these 3-hour-long presentations, as well as to do a booth and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So Tritone comes along with me, and I'm like, and Tritone starts going, we should do a concert.
It was like my first time out of the forest for like 6 years.
And he was like, we have to do a concert. We have to do a concert. He's like, I'm going to call my brother and we're going to like get these musicians and we're going to do this concert. And I was like, oh, this is great. Yeah. I mean, Damanhur had done concerts in the past, but this was like, we were like, okay, we're going to do presentation, then concert, then presentation, then concert, and then I'll close it up with a presentation. So I'll explain what the Music of the Plants is and give them the history of it. Then, we'll have a music so people can experience it. Then we'll do kind of like a description of the science and blah, 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 maybe answer some questions. Then we'll do another concert, which we'll get in there. I mean, like another piece of the performance and whatever. Take it away. What happened?
Well, what happened was that all of a sudden I was called on stage totally unprepared to talk by you. And that sort of broke the whole thing right open. From since that day I was kind of in the spotlight of plant music, and I didn't know at the time, but you really opened up that sort of
Ta-da!
That's all her fault. If you
It's
come
my
to a
fault.
concert and whatever your experience is, it's her fault.
And it was an amazing
Yeah, it
concert.
was-
I mean, I
it
don't
was
think,
amazing.
I mean, I know you've had, and we're going to include clips of, Tritone's concerts nowadays, and they are like,
Yeah, there's something
but that
different.
concert
That
had,
had something special. It's actually on Spotify. It's
well, we're going to include some
yeah,
pieces
we
for
can
it.
include a link.
Yeah,
or
we'll
something
cue
like
it up and we'll play it in.
Yeah.
We'll mix it in throughout.
It's called Body Mind Spirit. I think we
or
called it in
something
the
like
end.
that.
It's very beautiful. So I ended up on stage and I had to talk a little bit about what we were doing. But the real stars of that show, I think it was an orchid.
It was an orchid.
And then who was playing music. And then we had a wonderful jazz musician called Emile Savary and my brother. And who else was there?
There was
the guitarist there?
There was a guitarist, a trombone player.
I don't
I
know.
don't remember their
I don't
names.
remember
One, and then your brother who was playing djembe, Benja was playing percussion, and then Emile who plays piano. And Emile and all of these were amazing jazzers. So jazz musicians have a very special kind of connection to each other, and they immediately connected then to orchid.
Yeah, so jazz musicians are fun in plant music context because they improvise. They're good at improvising, which is good together with plants who are seemingly sending out random notes, which they're not. But this is also kind of a little bit what happens in jazz, I guess. It's not random, but
it sounds it.
They have the skills to listen and respond to what's going on, and that made that concert very, very special.
Yeah, especially since the first part of it, we did it using, traditional sort of key signatures. So, major key signatures. Then for the second half, Emile's sort of obsessed with chromatic scales and with like non sort of traditional sounds. And so the second part of this concert, he did it all in chromatic. Like, so basically, if you're used to listening to most music, it's in a major scale. You maybe have a minor where it sounds a little bit more sad. Imagine that you have no limits. Like, he was using all this atonal type music.
Just using all the notes on the piano, not limiting yourself to a specific key, number of notes or keys or scales. That was pretty wild. I think that got censored out on the Spotify. So.
But I have it.
You have it?
I have that recording.
Yeah. Wow. I want
so we're going to include it.
Yeah.
And it's such an amazing concert, not just because one, we had like 100 people there and they were blown away, but it gave birth to a very important project. What happened after that?
Well, the project it gave birth to was Masterplants. We didn't know what it was going to be called at the time.
It was called Love Revolution when we did it. The first name was Love Revolution.
Oh, gosh. Well, we didn't understand what it was, I think, when we started it. Like what happens with many things. But then my brother and Emil, they got a plant music device because of a. We gave them a device because of a collaboration. They came to Damanhur and did a CD based on different music project, but based on Damanhurian culture about the sacred woods. We did a CD. Part of their payment was a plant music device, which then they took out and started doing some concerts and stuff like that. And mind you, it's these devices just had one plant. So you
Mhm.
could play with one plant, which was very nice, very distinguishable in the music. And then they played as human musicians with that one plant for some concerts.
Yeah, and then I think you ended up getting a few devices in the end, the group, as
Mm,
Masterplants.
yeah, they got
There
some
was
prototypes going as well from Music
yeah,
of the Plants
and I remember
company.
that
That's
there
true.
was like certain musicians, they started playing with a basil plant. See,
Yeah,
I have these weird
there's
memories.
probably, but yeah, that's fun to hear about as well. So we ended up doing, and they ended up doing a bunch of different experimental music, which when you hear it now and you don't know the context, it sounds like really weird. Like, but these are really that's really the birth of plant music, at least in our context. And they used drum machines and they used like Viking instruments and they
There was a Viking
there
one.
was a
I remember.
Viking
I have
group.
that.
They had like a
I
medieval group going on as
I will
well.
include, there's a link to one of those. I think I
Yeah,
have a link on my YouTube
go
page.
for
I'm
it.
going to look
Yeah.
for it.
And then they tried to play plant music with different musicians to discover like how would
Different
classic
human musicians.
human sorry
Yeah.
yeah
I think there was like 3 or 4 plant musicians that they
hmm
were working with long term. And then there was like 4 or 5 human
yeah
musicians that kind of kept
it
rotating in
kept
and out.
rotating. There was a bassist,
Mm-hmm.
an exceptional violinist as well,
Mm.
who was classically educated, who always claimed not to be able to improvise, but what she did with the plants was unbelievable. That's
I
also
love it.
on the Spotify, on the same album, I think. Um, which is sort of a collection of the first experimentations, and it sounds very weird. It's some of it is kind of like kind of blue, like old like weird jazz records and stuff like that. But that ended up becoming master plants, and my brother ended up coming back to Damanhur and say, "Hey, can't we do a plant music device that enables more plants to play music in order to have like more of a plant band, and then they instead of having more humans and then one plant, then we have more plants and less humans." And we were then able to construct a plant device on the same principles,
Mm-hmm.
that measures the plants in the same ways. And then it had up to 8 plants that we were able to connect. At that point, Emil and Benjamin, they sort of stepped back, and I somehow ended up with the device traveling around India and
Hold on, let me.
yeah,
So
then it
I just
becomes a
realized
really
that it gets crazy.
crazy
So
story.
I should have said this from the very beginning. In
Oh
case
yeah.
you've never heard anything that we're talking about, the music of the plants, which is
Mm.
the original device we're talking about,
Yeah,
is, and
that's
you've heard
true.
me talk about the music of the plants multiple times, right? So we're just going to take a little bit of a break, and we're going to talk for a second about the music of the plants.
Good idea.
I think we can all agree that music is the true universal language. In fact, what we think of as language is actually musicality. And I would argue that plants may be the greatest composers of all. By using the music of the plants device, plants are now able to share their healing and communicate with us in a language we can understand. Music of the Plants now has different devices to experiment with, whether you're a musician looking to play along with your plant friends, a healer who wants to enhance their practice, or simply curious. In the show notes, you'll find a link to purchase the right device for you, such as this Bamboo M. There are also all sorts of fun extras, such as downloadable interspecies music and plant music merchandise. So click on the link to the music of the plants in the show notes to discover how you can start making music with your plants today. So now that you have an understanding of music of the plants, this is where it gets really interesting, because the thing about the music of the plants is that specifically the music of the plants device, of all the plant music devices, which was the one developed here at Damanhur, is the one that's closest to the plant, and in the sense that many of the other devices were originally built for musicians, so they have a whole series of constraints. where
For
the
musicians, you mean for users?
for the no more musicians, like
Were they?
like some of the other ones were made for specifically for making music
Yeah.
type of thing,
Uh-huh.
even though it's one plant, but the idea is
Mm.
like it always has to really sound nice because it's made for music.
Ah, yeah, in that sense, yeah.
Instead, the music of the plants, which most people will say sounds kind of alien, is a little bit on purpose because it was designed, it was co-created with the plants. You know, when
Mm-hmm.
the original people who were working on it, like Camaleonte and stuff like that, it was really co-created. Then Master Plants kind of is an evolution that brings both of these things together
Mm-hmm.
because the underlying technology kind of has those roots because of you, because of being the Damanhur, because of the connections that you have with Damanhur and such, has those roots in let me try to be as, let me give the plants their experience while at the same time you're creating a device that makes it also possible for the plants to very much interact with humans in a
Mm-hmm.
way. And we had this conversation the other day, which is that, and I've been saying this for years, plant music is going to evolve in multiple ways. It has to
It is
sort
so
of
right.
pass through the human interpretation of music. We have these scales, we have these keys, we have all these things we're used to hearing. And when it's not constrained to a certain extent, when the plants can just be 100% plants, we just think of it as weird. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of
Yeah.
people don't necessarily, you have to really be connected to step into that weirdness in a good way.
Yeah, for sure.
And so the music, so I've always said that for years we're going to probably have like devices that sort of allow plants, kind of like any musical instrument, whether you're talking about a guitar or a piano or whatever, has constraints, right? I can use only certain notes, there's certain intervals between them, there's all these things. So the device does the same thing. That's why it's a musical instrument for plants. And so it feels sometimes like like Master Plants, the device that you've been creating over these years, is that hybrid where you're giving the plants sort of their space, and because of your connection to the plants, you know that the plants kind of want to take that space in certain ways, while at the same time you're having a concert, and concerts to humans have rules, right? It
Mm-hmm.
has a
Exactly.
certain types of things
Exactly.
that you have to do. How has that been in the creation mode? Like when you're working with the plants, do they ever yell at you and be like, "Can I just do my own thing?"
There are some funny stories. Of course, this is the realm of, I wouldn't call it mysticism, or but it is an interpretation also,
Mhm.
and also where you, as a human, you have to trust your own experience with the plants, because a lot of us, as you also probably talk about it, we see them as objects, or we're not even aware that they're around. Um, so there is a sort of sensitivity going on, and you have to sort of trust that ability that you have. And then, in the context of our devices in our music, um, like our device sort of pulls you in to think about also how the plant would react in a musical context. As you say, we can give them a lot of rules and then it's going to sound like a human playing, or we can give them free range, and then it's going to be sounding really alien and kind of could be uncomfortable to some people as well. So at one in one part we have these two extremes of control or letting go, and also the pleasurability, I guess, of the music. And then we have the technology in between that has to sort of bridge both, because for us and our project, this is about creating that bridge, and it's about getting plants into the musical world, or to express themselves, and then getting humans to open ourselves to what the plants are doing, and also to start thinking about like how are their processes during the music and what's going on and so on. So it's sort of, over time you start to really
Mm-hmm.
change into, like, you kind of become a little bit plant, I guess. Maybe
You
that's something
do.
you
That's
talk
exactly
about
it.
as
I mean,
well. Yeah.
that's as your plant. I mean, and I don't know if
Yep.
you notice this, but I notice it because it happens to me all the time and we talk about it all the time, which is as you're trying to explain that, the words become harder to find
Yeah.
because you are tapping into that plantness. You are tapping into your vegetality because you have, I mean, like you, we've all seen a lot of different kinds of plant music concerts, and you can see in the sense that we've seen a lot of where you can see where the musician, the human musician, struggles. I did a concert once. I facilitated a concert once in Bulgaria
Mm-hmm.
where we had this violinist, a classically trained violinist, that was playing with a pianist and accompanist. And she knew going into this that it was supposed to be, we had four plants playing,
Mm-hmm.
and it was in a beautiful gem museum. And she knew going into it that plants are what plants are, right? This is how they play. She just couldn't get out of her training of, I have
Mm.
notes on a sheet of music and I'm supposed to play those notes. And we kept saying to her, stop for a second and like give yourself space to really feel into it. But she
Mm.
struggled with that. So we've all heard those people that just can't seem to let go of their humanness enough to let that plantness
Mm.
resonate. And like you said, that bridge that happens
Mm-hmm.
between my humanness and plantness, and I allow my plantness to kind of tap into the plantness of the plant, while the
Mm.
plant is also tapping into humanness, because that's the reason why the plant knows and how the plant knows
Mm.
human notes and the way that we consider music. It's this dance that has to happen. And that dance goes beyond the words that we normally have, because you're tapping into other parts of yourself.
It becomes kind of esoteric for me. I'm not a scientist in any way, so for me, I just like to call it sort of mysticism or spirituality or some.
It's woo woo
But
stuff.
it's
It's
woo woo
woo woo
stuff.
stuff.
But yeah, kind of foo foo woo woo kind of thing. But I mean, there, it's a matter of perception in the end. You have to trust what it is that you perceive, and there are also instances of collective perception where I, for example, have mentioned we're in a plant session and I disregard the plant in some way. We were like two, three people there. And I said, oh, yeah, but the plant is just here giving out signals and we can just do anything we want. And then immediately, all three of us, we felt like, bam,
Mm.
like, what? What are you talking about? That's not how it is. I'm here doing a bunch of stuff. You don't get to disrespect me while we're doing this. So, and this was an experience that was shared by all the people in the room, which was, it just kind of mystic, or I don't know what it is,
No,
intuition,
it's
or
fine.
it is a way that we somehow receive, all three of us, a collective intuition that the plant is communicating this to us, that I was not being
Very
very
respectful.
respectful to it. So these are also in the music. It happens, as you say. Some people, they can be kind of rigid in their musical personalities,
Mhm.
as some people can also be rigid in their
Listening in the
in their
way that they
listening, or the
receive.
way that they express themselves, or like that. And the same way, musicians, some musicians can really gel into that vibe, and then it becomes some sort of otherworldly vibratory complex thing, which is just so beautiful when it
Here's a
happens.
strange question for you. Now that you've traveled, I'm the queen of strange questions.
Let's
Everybody knows
go.
that. So
I'm the queen of strange answers.
now that you've traveled a bit and you've played in India, you've spent a long time in both India and Africa recently.
Mhm.
Do you find that as you meet people and start to introduce the plant music, is are there, I guess the question I'm asking is, are there cultural differences? Like, do you see that there are some places that you've been to where it's easier for the people to connect into what the plants are doing? Do you find that it's still a very individual thing? Do you find that some cultural, maybe music, makes it easier for people to accept the plant music? Like, what have you seen, as, if any, of differences?
Yeah, well, I think that the European countries are most susceptible, like,
Hmm.
to these things right now, because we're in kind of a state where we're talking a lot about the eco wave and green
Mm.
technology, and we have all this abundance, but now we're kind of craving to go back to nature and
Oh,
stuff
I
like
can
that.
see that.
So Africa, for example, people need food and they need work. They can't worry too much about
Right.
the
Exactly.
plant music. Or I was accused of, they were like, at the concerts, they were like, oh, this guy, that's strange, like
Yeah.
he knows too much, he shouldn't be doing that around here, or stuff like
Interesting.
that. India is also like in this, around the cities and in the touristy areas. I mean, around the cities, there's a lot of like tech and high society kind of thing going
Mm.
on as well. There also getting more into the healing aspects of plants. They have an incredible Ayurvedic culture and
Exactly.
stuff like that. So they're also into it on a cultural level. Then, of course, there's the whole hippie scene in the
Hippies
west
are
coast
everywhere,
of
man.
India,
Hippies are
and they're
everywhere.
all into that. They're like,
Oh yeah.
let's
Let's
go,
go to
let's
Goa
meet
and
with the
dance and
plant,
like
and yeah, and then meditate with the plants and so on.
I love it.
Um,
I love it.
so, but I feel that for the project right now, Europe is probably the, the most fertile place because there's a lot of like-minded people that are able to work on that in that kind of field. Not taking away from the other
No,
cultures, it's
no.
just like
I mean, it was
where it
more.
seems like we're ready for this kind of interaction.
Yeah, and I think it's so far outside that of the norm to be at a concert that the musicians are plants, because in particular with you right now, like where Master Plants started off in this perspective of being a lot of, like you said, jazz musicians with maybe one or two plants.
Mhm.
Then with the advent of your device, the Master Plants Orchestra, like gives the idea for multiple plants.
Became more
and,
plants,
and
yeah.
you, although you are a musician, you find yourself more on the I'm the hands, I'm the engineer,
Yeah.
helping, and more of an electronic producer with the plants, as well as, more than anything, like when I do plant music healing sessions, I oftentimes tell people, I'm like, I am here at the service of Spider Plant.
Mhm.
Like that's my job, is to be here and to do what Spider Plant needs. And it feels like in some ways that's kind of what you're doing. And now that you've been doing this and you've given, like, the plants that you've been working with get to know the device, you get to start to express yourself even more.
Yeah.
So where do you see this going? Where do you see the music that you're making going?
I think we're going back to becoming what we call interspecies, an
Mm-hmm.
interspecies band or interspecies music, which was also the name of the first album,
Yeah.
interspecies music. Then the device came along and it was like really cool. It could do much more than we expected. So it became just like a plant band. And as she says, as you say, also, I became kind of in the service, just putting up the thing, doing a little bit of maintenance during the concert, making sure everything was working. And then slowly there's room for myself also to grow artistically into it, but it's taken me some time to figure out like what I'm supposed to do in that context, also because many people are still really confused about what's
Mm.
going on. They're able to understand one plant playing one sound and you're able to decipher that. It's easy to understand, but then when there's more sonic information, then people kind of get confused about who's playing what is going on already. So also adding a human element into that, it just didn't feel right now, until now. um, but now we're sort of starting to go more into
Well, it's
species
that
again.
progression that we were
Yeah.
talking about, right? Like when I go and I watch a symphony, I don't wonder which violin I'm hearing, right? I
Yeah.
know that there's a bunch of people on stage, there's a bunch of violinists, yes, there's the first chair, but I don't necessarily, unless it's somebody I know, I'm not trying to understand exactly what, or even a band. Sure, okay, I might know the singer because I know the singer's voice, but I don't necessarily, when I have something where I have multiple musicians on stage, after a while, I forget that they're individual sounds, like individual instruments coming in. They all
Yeah, you
blend
gotta
together.
sound like a band.
You have to sound like a band. And I think that this is part of that progression with plant music. The majority of plant music out there, because there aren't any other devices like the ones that you're creating, are about one plant usually. So you can hear one plant, and even though Damanhur in the past has done, multiple plant concerts, because the sounds are so separate, like so different, um, it's still easier to hear and to associate, oh, this sound with this plant. I remember when I was at Chelsea Flower Show way back in 2013, we had 4 plants on stage that were connected to 4 individual devices, and each one had a distinct sound. But that artist that had put that entire exhibit together had had the plants play together for 2 weeks beforehand. So by the time Chelsea started, those plants were starting to sound like a band. Like they were blending. Each one had sort of settled into their own role. One more percussive sounding, one more holding the kind of tempo, the other one holding more the melody line, and there was like it was really interesting to watch. And so the audience could see just 4 individual plants, and then we could solo the plants. Like we could shut off the
Mm-hmm.
other devices so that people could hear that one. And like you said, a lot of them asked, like, who's
Mm-hmm.
playing what?
What's going on?
But
Yeah.
I do think that over time, as plant music in general becomes more mainstream, as devices like yours become more mainstream, being a multi-track device, like multi-input device, I think we're going to again go back to the idea of the band,
Mm-hmm.
and that plant music is going to become that sound of melding together, of what gets created
Mm-hmm.
together. And I think that's going to leave a lot more, which is the realm that I am the most excited about, is the idea of those interspecies kind of collaborations. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's gonna be cool.
I think it's going to be awesome because way back when I first started working in this realm, that was what I was pushing for. I was helping people curate interspecies kind of exhibitions and concerts and things like that. And I kind of so I'm a projector on the human design factor, which means I live about 5 to 10 years in the future. And I don't realize it until somebody smacks me down and is like, what the hell are you talking about? People don't want that. But it's because I'm usually like in the future. And so it's only now that the kind of curated exhibits and concerts that I want to have are starting to come into fruition. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because people are in certain environments, besides the fact that there's this huge reawakening that's happening for people and plants in general, right? So
Exactly.
we're starting to step out of our plant blindness. We're starting to see more critical plant studies, human plant relationships, the plant humanities, plant anthropology, all of these different pieces that are starting to come in, that's making people realize, oh, plants are beings, they're persons. And so now the music being an ensemble doesn't, it's easier to even conceptualize, like, oh, well, of course, if the plants are aware and each one has its own personality, of course they're going to be playing together. And then I'm going to stop, I think, at some point wondering who's making that note
Mm-hmm.
versus I'm listening to a band up on stage.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious as to if you are able to project yourself into the future and you're having a concert, so it's you
Mm-hmm.
and whomever else, whether a human, plant, what do you see? Where do you see yourself, and what kind of art do you want to be creating?
I think there's two fun sides of it. Of course, we're going to be creating much more art with plants, and the device is going to go out to more artists.
Mm-hmm.
We're working on that as well. And these artists are also, share a similar work ethic with us. Like they want to communicate that about that gap that exists between us and the plants right now,
Mm-hmm.
and we want to bridge that. So in that sense, there are going to be more artists for sure, and I see that there's going to be a lot more interspecies stuff going on, where both there will be pieces where the humans and the plants are very integrated and really creating that same sort of symphony that you get when you go out in the jungle. No,
Mm-hmm.
you hear like the whole of nature's like vibrating, and the insects and the birds and all the cat
Right.
creatures and the wind and everything is sort of has their own symphony, no? And then there is another thing that I like is also where you can sort of distinguish the human musician.
The infamous solo.
The solo, because it also has its own beauty
Yep.
when you can hear a bird, or like it has its own emotion. So I think we're going to go really far, and I think we're going to go sonically and philosophically, especially very far with this kind of music, because there's a lot of philosophic implications as well.
Mm-hmm.
You wonder about different things when you have a plant in front of you than when you have like a musician. Can you play like a G major and
Yeah.
this and that? It's a completely different way that you have to interact. So you as a sort of as a human or whatever we are, we sort of have to change into learn about that interaction as well, which is very precious, and it gives a lot of wonderful gifts back just
Absolutely.
to be in that space.
Well, and it also changes the nature of a song. I was thinking about this after our last conversation because, of course, today with the interactions we have with plants, you can't say, like, here's my sheet music, give it to the plant and be like, this is what you're going to play, right?
Hmm.
And so I was trying to understand what is the nature of a track or a song
Mm-hmm.
when it can never be completely replicated. And I was trying to figure out in my own mind. I was just, sitting here with all of my plant friends, of which really only one or two of them are musicians. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's um, at least musicians that play regularly. And so I was asking them, what is the nature of a song? Like, what does that look like? I mean, yes, there are some songs that are mainly key signatures, or like changes in, what chord structures, I guess is what I'm really
Mm-hmm.
looking for, that you play. And then, yeah, sure, there's a slight melody, and that gives us recognizability to be able to say, oh, that's such and such a track.
Mm.
um, but that's the nature of human music that we've created. And
Yeah.
so instead, I was thinking about how, when we, like, one of the very first albums I ever heard connected to plant music was more about tracks that were recorded not so much for being a song, but more for being such and such plants playing together. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is three roses. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and then that was edited into, or
Mm.
mixed down into a track.
Yeah, we did that as well in
Yeah,
the
I think
beginning.
at the beginning, that's the only thing you could do,
What you can think
really.
about.
It's the only way you
Yeah.
could think about it, because our human kind of way of thinking about it. So it was kind of like, I'm just recording a jam session and I'm turning it into something that I can listen to over and over again.
Mm.
I think, though, that now we're moving into, and then we move towards the idea of some of, like, the way that you work, which is,
Mm-hmm.
there's a context, there's a shape that you've given it with a human shape, and you've included these plants as part. So there's maybe instrumentation that each
Mm-hmm.
plant takes, and that you identify and say, okay, this plant is this instrument and this plant is this instrument, and I have a certain arc as the human. And it's kind of like a little bit like a conductor slash composer of live, where you're taking pieces of live events, of live jams, and you're sort of on the fly mixing them together. But you always sort of have this, you have the arc in your mind, and so therefore that's what makes a song. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what gives you the repeatability when you're doing a concert. So no concert really sounds exactly the same,
No.
but there's
Well,
elements of it that
yeah.
are similar, and that if you listen to them over and over again, you could identify. I don't actually think we know what the heck the future is going to be.
I think it's going to be big. I think this is going to be growing. There's a lot of talk on the internet about it. There's a lot of people doing like mushroom
Yeah,
concerts,
mushroom
which is
music.
very easy to
I saw
understand.
ice music.
Ice music.
Yep,
That's
it was
great.
music being created as ice was melting. And I just
That's
told you about
beautiful.
this. There's somebody inside of the Naturally Conscious community, so you should come in here, because we're trying to get Tritone to come and share more of their music inside of the Naturally Conscious community. But there's somebody in there now, Jean-Luc, who does the music of proteins.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so I'm like, the music of proteins and the music of plants. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do
Let's
it.
do
Yeah.
it.
Some
Type
people
of
are also mixing brainwave music.
brainwave
We
music.
had like a brainwave band hooked up to musical devices as well, but it sounded so much like plant stuff.
Which
So
makes sense.
it makes sense. However, it was confusing to the
Yeah.
audience. So, and then having some dude with a headband full of wires and stuff, it was kind of getting.
But
even,
we do need to
it
get
was
the,
getting very
we need
weird.
to go tell the audience when they ask you which plant, which sound is which. We just
Yeah.
need to be like, chill out.
Yeah, just
Like,
relax.
just relax for a
So-
bit. Close your eyes. Allow yourself for it to walk. Kind of like we were saying, it's kind of like a gong bath.
Yeah.
You don't know which gong is playing what. Just let the whole thing wash over
Yeah.
you and see what comes up from there.
Yeah, when we made the latest set, and we went from having the older device, we just have a new prototype recently. We started to think also about how is the voice of nature itself. So how does more voices combine into one voice, which is then the symphonic music that we're doing. No, so in a symphonic orchestra, everybody pitches in to make the symphony, and which is also the name of our device, by the way. And so if you know the more esoteric side about our music, it's the idea of the concert is actually what happens to you and what happens when you meet plant consciousness. So the set that we have and the music that we play is like the doorway to plant consciousness. You enter into their world. It's like the second track becomes a little bit more alien. Then there is a place of calm, and then you meet the voice of nature, which kind of sings to you, and then there's like this grand moment of coming back into our world with the knowledge that your voice and the voice of nature is the same voice. This is sort of the idea about our
I
set.
love it.
Nobody knows that, but we
Now
just
you know it.
yeah, we're doing human experiments in every concert to see how that sort of meeting goes. And we felt that that was also a worthy way of representing plant music, even though we usually don't get around to explain that kind of stuff
Mhm.
during the concerts. So this is a special thing for this moment. This is this kind of what we wanted to express through our music is that meeting with plant consciousness, and the individual voice might not be distinguishable all the time, but there is a sphere that you can enter into, and you can merge your own being with the plant nature, which is also our own nature somehow. We all
Right.
we all come from that sort of
Oh, I love it. I'm
from that
excited.
sphere,
I'm
yeah.
excited. Okay, so if people are interested in the music that you're making, in the work that you're doing with these plants, in the music, and who are your plant musicians, where do they go?
Yeah, well, they can always write us. We have hello at masterplants.net. We have a website,
No.
masterplants.net.
I'll include it
I
in the show
think the
notes so you don't
best
have to
way,
worry about
yeah,
it.
I think the best thing is really to come to our concerts. Our
Mm,
websites are one thing, but seeing and experiencing the vibrations that the plants choose to play, because as she said also earlier, we give them the sounds and the sort of templates that they can play within, but the concerts are always played differently. So they might have a violin like a violinist have, they might have the same instruments uh, in the concerts, but they never play them the same way twice.
no.
So that means that every concert sort of sonically interacts with the whoever is there at that moment that the concert is being played. The frequencies will be different
Hmm.
for them. So coming to a concert is really the best experience. But we are online on Spotify on with Master Plans, and you can
Nice.
listen to the concerts as well from when Tigrila
Yeah, most
was
definitely.
first promoting us.
Oh, so much fun. So much fun.
Yeah.
I miss that. I think the
Yeah. Well,
environment,
do it
like you
again.
said, like being in it is so different.
Mm.
And there's so many challenges that we still have to kind of to get ourselves out and of the mess. Even just traveling with plants is not the easiest thing in the
They
world.
don't. How do you book a plane
And
ticket for a plant?
I actually have one of my clients who has a plant that has now traveled all over the
Oh,
place
really?
with her. And
They have.
so,
You need
but it's,
passports for them,
yeah,
and
there's all
it's
these
not.
restrictions. It's
Yeah.
not the easiest thing in the world. So this is part of the whole kind of training that's happening of more and more plant musicians and being able to connect
Yeah,
into
it's
plant
funny.
musicians all over the world. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, any last words, anything you want to share, things that you've experienced, wisdom that you've been taught from the plants in this on this path?
Well, I think the core wisdom is basically that we are the same voice as they are, so we can take up the yeah, we're plants, and then we are nature
Mm-hmm.
itself. So taking up that sort of responsibility and role, or but also just realizing that we are nature itself, and we can
Yes.
really move towards a harmonic pattern with nature, and represent the nature that we are and that they are.
Mm-hmm.
This is sort of the core wisdom that I feel that I've gotten out of it. And it's a process because we all come from cities or whatever we come from.
Right.
And even if we are very harmonic beings, that's still going to be a process interacting with nature itself and co-creating, right? So I guess I think that's the core wisdom that I've
I
gotten
like
out of
it.
it. And you?
And me, oh please. You know, I talk about plant music all the time, and
Yeah.
obviously because it was my great reawakening. Like when I
Yeah.
when all of this world started, it was all thanks to that one plant playing at the mill that just opened up this whole perspective. And I think the beauty is being a musician as well as coming from like a healing background and all these aspects is that I've been able to meet so many plant musicians, but who want to use plant music in different ways. You know, there's the plant musician healer, like Spider Plant, for example, my business partner, who does all the healing now in the family, like, and I don't do it. Versus other plants that are about you know, want to play music that you're going to make music with, versus another plant like Dracaena back here who wants to make music for you to dance to
Mm.
move your body in a form of communication. And so I think it's really still in a place of experimentation, which I think is so great, and of personalization, right? And this is why having your own device, whether you're an individual and you just want to work with plants one-on-one and you get something like the Music of the Plants device, or if you're a musician of some sort or an artist who wants to create with multiple plants, and you go down the path of the Masterplants
Of
Symphony
madness.
of madness of madness, because when the plants outnumber you, trust me,
Then you're in for a
then
ride.
things, you never know what the heck is going to happen there. So I think that
That's
allowing
fun.
ourselves to form these relationships with plants in different ways, and to see, they're going to take you. I thought it was going to take me much more down the route of like music, like what you're doing, and in reality it's taken me much more down the route of art as like performance art, as a form of emotional expression and of exploration, and then of healing, which was not what I expected at all to this journey. So I think that that's the other piece of it, is like, not all music is the same, and just like it's not in humans, but remembering that the music is a form that the plant can express in the original way that we as human beings have expressed ourselves. We've always expressed ourselves through sound and movement and dance and all the different waves and those tonalities that help us express ourselves. So I think that's what makes plant music so incredibly powerful. And I really look forward to seeing what you create with your own like expression of your connection to plants, whether you're creating any kind of art or performance art, whether you're creating music, anything that it is. So you can always come into the Naturally Conscious community. That's the place where we're sharing all of these different ways that we are working with. We even have one of the people in the community who has written a children's book introducing the music of the plants to children, so that way they can connect with trees and with other kinds of plants. And so who knows where these expressions are going to take us. But thank you so much, Tritone. Thank you for this conversation. Everything is going to be in the show notes, so you can see links to music and videos, and to also the device, and both the individual Music of the Plants device, as well as for you all multi-track folks, the Masterplants Symphony, which is currently still under production. The latest.
We're almost there.
We're almost there. So support Tritone's project so that we can get more plant music into the hands of musicians and artists around the world. So, and remember, as always, resist the urge to hold back your emerging green brilliance. This is me, Tigria Gardenia, and
Tritone Crisantemo.
And that's bye for now. We'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to this episode of ReConnect with Plant Wisdom. Intro and outro music by Steve Shuley and Poinsettia from The Singing Life of Plants. So join me, Tigria Gardenia, and my plant collaborators next time on ReConnect with Plant Wisdom.